You know the feeling of a sudden, quiet certainty? It isn't a loud thought or a frantic emotion. It is a simple, steady internal compass pointing toward a specific direction. You recognize it as the right move. Yet, in that exact moment of clarity, something else rises to meet it. A heavy, familiar resistance pulls you back into the shadows of delay. You choose to wait. You choose to ignore what you already know. Have you ever noticed how this tension feels most intense right before a major shift? It is as if a hidden mechanism triggers a failsafe the moment you get too close to the truth. This explains why your greatest moments of hesitation are rarely about confusion. They are actually a sophisticated signal that you are standing at a threshold you are not yet sure you want to cross. We have all had those days where the path ahead seems lit by a sudden, brilliant spotlight. You know exactly which email to send, which conversation to start, or which habit to finally break. It feels like an invitation from reality itself. But then a strange shift occurs. As soon as you prepare to move, the internal weather changes. The clarity is replaced by a heavy, unexplainable fog. You might tell yourself you're just being practical, or that the timing isn't right. Yet, if you look closely, this pattern repeats with an almost mathematical precision. It is a cycle of reaching for the door, only to pull your hand back at the last second.
This raises an unsettling question. Why does the resistance grow strongest exactly when the solution is most obvious? It suggests that what we call procrastination or fear might actually be something else entirely, a misinterpretation of a much deeper signal. You may have been overlooking a fundamental rule of how your inner world interacts with your outer experience. Stay with me, because once you see the mechanism behind this friction, the way you navigate your life will never look the same. We often categorize our lives into good days and bad luck. On some days, the world seems to move out of your way. You think of a person and they call. You have a difficult task and the perfect resource appears exactly when needed. This is the state we call flow. But then the pattern shifts. You find yourself standing before a clear opportunity, something you have wanted for months, and suddenly you feel a phantom weight. Your mind begins to manufacture reasons to turn away. You tell yourself you need more research, more time, or more coffee. This isn't the ordinary tiredness of a long week. It is a specific, sharp resistance that only shows up when you are on the verge of a breakthrough. Have you noticed how this friction never seems to appear when you are doing something unimportant? It only strikes when you are about to act on what you know is right. This is the strange consistency many people overlook.
We assume these moments of avoidance are personal flaws or simple laziness. In reality, the repetition suggests something deeper is at play. The resistance isn't an obstacle to the path. It is a predictable reaction to the path itself. This is where the experience begins to make sense. We are taught to view our hesitation as a lack of discipline. We treat our excitement as a fleeting, unreliable emotion. But in this teaching, those labels are reversed. Imagine that your excitement is not just a feeling, but a highly precise navigation signal. It is a frequency that indicates which path is most aligned with your true nature. When you feel that sudden spark of knowing, you are actually perceiving a version of reality that already exists. This reveals something important about how reality works. The signal is always simple, and we often overlook it because it feels so ordinary. The resistance you feel is not a sign that you are doing something wrong. Instead, it is the friction caused by your old belief systems trying to protect you from a shift in identity. This changes the way we see the experience entirely. You aren't failing to act. You are simply experiencing the mechanical tug-of-war between a new frequency and an old habit. Once you view excitement as a compass and resistance as a border-crossing signal, the pattern becomes easier to understand. This is the hidden rule behind the experience. Think of your reality not as a single, solid timeline, but as a series of distinct radio frequencies. Every choice you make, every impulse you follow, and every fear you entertain is a way of tuning the dial. When you feel that spark of excitement, you are actually picking up a broadcast from a higher frequency version of yourself. This is why the pattern behaves this way. That version of you already knows exactly how to handle the situation. But here is the mechanism many people overlook. The moment you decide to ignore that signal, You aren't just delaying an action, you are literally switching channels. You are moving from a frequency of flow to a frequency of friction. It works like a sophisticated navigation system. If you ignore the prompt to turn, the system doesn't stop working, it simply begins calculating a route through a much more difficult terrain. This explains why the flow disappears the moment we ignore the signal. You are no longer in alignment with the path that was providing the ease. Suddenly, the shift begins to make sense. Resistance appears because you are trying to solve a high-frequency problem using a low-frequency mindset. This mechanism has been operating in your life the entire time, quietly guiding every ordinary decision you've ever made. The friction you feel isn't the world pushing against you. It is the vibration of your old belief systems rubbing against the new frequency you were invited to join.
If the mechanism is so simple, why is it so difficult to follow? This is where many of us lose the signal. We have been conditioned to believe that life must be a struggle to be valid. We equate heavy effort with worthiness and constant caution with intelligence. This is the moment the inner voice begins to argue. It whispers that your excitement is irresponsible, or that your intuition is just a distraction from real work. Most people mistake this internal obstacle for wisdom or maturity. You tell yourself you are being realistic, but in truth, you are simply choosing the safety of a known limitation over the expansion of an unknown possibility. How many times has caution silenced the signal of excitement in your life? When we choose logic over alignment, the momentum we felt moments ago simply evaporates. We find ourselves back in the fog, wondering where the clarity went. This is the moment excitement gets replaced by doubt, and the radio dial slips back into the static of the status quo. Have you ever noticed yourself doing this? Talking yourself out of a path that felt undeniably right? If you've experienced these moments of internal debate, I'm curious to hear how that inner dialogue usually sounds for you. The transition from stagnation to flow does not require a massive life overhaul. It begins with a simple 3-step navigation method. First, identify which of your available options contains even the slightest spark of excitement.
It doesn't have to be a life-changing mission. It could be as small as choosing a specific book or making a phone call. Second, act on that excitement to the very best of your ability. Push the idea as far as it can naturally go with the resources you have right now. Finally, and most importantly, release all attachment to the outcome. This is where the navigation truly begins. We often kill the signal by demanding it leads to a specific prize, but the signal's job is simply to get you moving. Once you act, the mechanism shifts and a new signal will appear. This process works best when followed with a sense of quiet curiosity rather than the pressure to succeed. This is how the signal becomes action and how the shift in your timeline actually starts. What small excitement have you been ignoring because it didn't seem important enough? If this perspective resonates with you, consider subscribing as we continue to explore the hidden architecture of reality. The change rarely starts with something dramatic. It often begins in the middle of a mundane afternoon. Consider a moment where you feel a sudden, quiet impulse to visit a bookstore you haven't entered in years. Your logical mind might argue that you have no reason to go there, or that you have work to finish, but you decide to follow the spark anyway. While browsing a random shelf, you pull down a book that contains the exact technical solution to a project you've been stuck on for weeks.
10 minutes later, you run into an old colleague who happens to be looking for someone with your specific skills. This is often how the shift begins. By following a small curiosity, you moved into a frequency where the right people and information were already waiting. You may have already experienced similar moments without realizing their significance, dismissing them as simple luck or coincidence. In reality, you were witnessing the mechanism in action. The signal usually appears in small moments because it doesn't want to overwhelm you. It only wants to move you. How many times has a small, seemingly random decision changed the entire direction of your day? These aren't accidents. They are the visible results of choosing alignment over the familiar weight of hesitation. This suggests something remarkable about the nature of reality. We often view our lives as a straight line, moving from a fixed past toward an uncertain future. But if excitement is a frequency and resistance is a signal, then reality is far more flexible than it appears. This changes the way we understand the experience of choice. It implies that every version of your life already exists as a potential frequency, waiting for you to tune in. You are not creating a new path from scratch. You are simply aligning with a version of yourself that is already living that reality. Suddenly, the pattern reveals a deeper meaning.
The hesitation you feel isn't just a delay. It is the experience of standing between two different versions of existence. Could these signals be guiding us toward versions of ourselves we have not yet explored? This is the intellectual peak of the discovery. You are not a passenger in a predetermined world, but a navigator choosing between infinite possibilities. You may already be standing at the threshold of this realization in your own life, sensing that the right path is not something you find, but something you become. Perhaps the signal has been there all along, hidden in the quiet corners of your day. It is easy to assume that life happens to us, but the pattern suggests that we are constantly participating in a dialogue with reality. The resistance you feel is not a failure. It is simply an invitation to return to your own frequency. Sometimes the shift begins simply by noticing. As you move through your world today, pay attention to those small sparks of interest and the subtle weight of hesitation. You may begin to notice something new in your life after hearing this, as if the world is suddenly revealing the mechanism it has used to guide you from the start. How might your experience change if you began listening more closely to what you already know is right? And if this perspective resonates with you, the next chapter of this journey explores how these internal frequencies determine the very version of reality you encounter.